Welcome back to another week. Boys, we are officially halfway through the NFL season. Not the fantasy season, halfway through the NFL season. It only took 9 weeks for us to kind of see who some of the contenders are and some of the pretenders. But I think out of this week, what I like to see in week 9, we finally saw Keenan Allen. He hit that 10K mark, and I know that was a super big achievement for him. Also, CJ Stroud. What a performance by that man himself. Broke the rookie passing record with 470 yards. Also tied the record with 5 touchdowns, tying his fellow Texan, Deshaun Watson and Daniel Jones with 5 touchdowns. Pretty impressive.
Hey, hold on.
By him.
Also, guys, let's also be aware of what A.J. Brown's doing for the Philadelphia Eagles. This man's making history. Did y'all realize that no one has ever scored more than 100 or had over 125 yards receiving in 5 consecutive games? No one has ever done that before. A.J. Brown did it.
Yeah, that is crazy. Another thing that's crazy, though, is I feel like we've just found the new Fitz magic in the league. Joshua Dobbs. He goes to a new team, only been with them for 5 days, didn't even really have a full practice, they said, with him. He would kind of go out there, learn the systems, everything else, hops in there, leads him to a win with the Minnesota Vikings. Crazy. Now he's going to be the starter for this Week 10 matchup. But anyways, let's go ahead and let's jump into this episode where we will be breaking down the stardom, sit-em, high risk, low risk, medium risk, wide receivers in these Week 10 matchups.
Have you guys been thinking about how we're already halfway through the season and you haven't had any luck in your betting yet? Well, neither have we. So guys, please join our Discord community and help us out. Help us help you. Guys, like Michael Scott said, money has been tight lately, but at the end of my life, when I'm sitting on my yacht, I'm going to be thinking about how much money I have. So no, I'm going to be thinking about how much bets I've been winning because of you guys. So guys, please join our Discord and help us out. We'll see you there.
So the first game on this list is a Thursday night football game between the Carolina Panthers and the Chicago Bears. Looking at this list, I really only have one low risk wide receiver here, and it's Adam Thielen. Again, he's just Mr. Reliable on that Carolina Panthers team. I know that Bryce Young has struggled at times throughout this year, and last week was one of them. And really, it's all of the wide receivers fall by the wayside, but the one that always has the most consistent weeks is Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen had the best week this last week for that team, and I'm giving him this low risk here. I know it's a Thursday night game, but as we can see, the Chicago Bears, they're about middle of the pack for defense versus the wide receiver position, coming in at number 18 in fantasy points per game allowed, and that's in terms of PPR points here. So again, he's looking at a 10 targets a game, so the double-digit targets, finishing just shy of the 20 fantasy points per game. Next on this list is DJ Chark Jr. I am giving him a medium risk here. He's going to get you anywhere from 6 to 8 fantasy points. I know bye weeks are coming into season. We got 4 more teams on bye this week. So I see him coming in as a flex, but he is that medium risk. I can see them kind of letting it loose against this improved Chicago Bears defense. They did just trade for Sweat from the Washington Commanders. So he had a decent game this last week, but again, he's going to start to figure himself out. I do see this defense improving. So giving him that medium risk here. Jonathan Mingo, on the other hand, he's a slightly bit more inconsistent. We've started to see him kind of come in, kind of not. I believe he had 1 reception this last week, so he did take a step back in this week 9 matchup. So giving him a medium risk here as well. I just think that coming into this matchup, they don't have a run game. They're trying to figure out answers any way they can. They had Miles Sanders come in. They've now given that role to Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard finished with roughly 60 yards rushing, and they still struggled on the ground. I know that they were out of that game for the most part, so they're having to throw quite a bit. And I think that that's going to be the exact recipe that you have against the Chicago Bears. Now, on the other end of this, I do give DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney both medium risk plays here. We still don't know the exact quarterback status of Justin Fields or the playing status of Justin Fields. So because of that, if it is the backup quarterback, I do not love DJ Moore here. We have seen him struggle, not hitting double digits in the 2 weeks that Justin Fields has been out. So if that is the case, then a medium risk. Now, even if Justin Fields is there, I still view him as a medium risk just because this Carolina Panthers team is very good against wide receivers. And even really, it's just because Carolina, they compete in games, but they compete on the ground. So because of that, it's hard to see DJ Moore really getting anything. I think he's a medium risk. He's worth a start. For sure, he's worth a start, but he does carry that medium risk weight with him. Darnell Mooney, on the other hand, we saw that he is the backup quarterback's favorite target whenever he is in. So we saw that he's had 2 pretty good weeks with him in there. So if he does get a start, I have him as a medium risk. Now, if Justin Fields is back, I think we drop him to a high risk here. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to Nathan for our Frankfurt, Germany game. This is game 2 playing there in Germany, and it's the Indianapolis Colts versus the New England Patriots.
Yeah, looking at this game, it seems like last week we got our first Frankfurt game with the Chiefs and the Dolphins. A lot of people thought there was going to be a lot of fireworks in that game between those two teams. It seems like jet lag has kind of caught up with the teams that are traveling to different countries to play football. But like DJ said, we got the Colts and the Patriots here. It's not a great game. I don't really love this for a game if you're trying to catch clout and more fans in a different country. I feel like you'd want some better teams there. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and start on the Colts side. We got Michael Pittman Jr. Michael Pittman Jr. He's going to be my low risk start, especially with Josh Downs going to be out probably this week. And Minshew, the Colts like to drop back and throw the football a lot. So Minshew has really thrown the ball a lot in the games that he's played with the absence of Anthony Richardson. So with that being said, I think that if you're dropping back to pass to throw the ball 40 times, you're going to have someone that you're going to have to rely on and count on, and that's going to be Michael Pittman Jr. for this Colts team in Frankfurt. Like I just said, Josh Downs is out. I feel like that was a guy that Minshew really liked to get the ball to. He's been a pretty good rookie so far this year. So that leaves really Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce is going to be he would usually be a high risk start for me, but like I said, with Josh Downs being out, he's going to move into the medium risk because of the fact that if you're going to throw the ball 40 times a game or close to it, Michael Pittman's not going to get 40 looks, 40 targets. So I expect us to see at least maybe anywhere between 9 and 12 points out of Alec Pierce this week. If you have some guys like I do this week, Cooper Kupp and Tyreek Hill on a bye week. Moving on to the other side of this matchup, we have the New England Patriots. We all have seen the New England Patriots play football this year. Has not been great. It's been very, very, very bad to sit down and watch them play football this year. Mac Jones, I don't think he's the guy there in New England. I don't really see him being in the Patriots uniform for much longer. So they have Juju Smith-Schuster there, and we all know what the doctor said about him going into the season, that he's just, one step, one, pivot away from his knee being completely blown out. But if they're going to have to throw the football to keep up with the Colts offense that can score a lot of points. So, I mean, he can be a guy that you could pick up and play or plug in and play this week because they're going to have to throw the football to keep up. I'm still going to keep him here as a medium risk guy just because of how bad Mac Jones has played this year. And they also have Demario Douglas, and he's going to be a high risk start for me just because I don't love the Patriots and I don't love their offense. That's all I have for this matchup. We're going to kick it over to Dalton for the Houston versus Cincinnati game.
Yeah, so guys, in this matchup, this is going to be one that's going to be some very talented defenses facing each other here between the Houston Texans and the Cincinnati Bengals. These defenses are very, very good. They're the Texans and the Bengals 7th and 8th, if you see there, for targets for their defense. So they're really good at guarding their wide receivers. Their secondaries are very tough. You've got D'Amico Ryans there with the Texans. A lot of us were second guessing this team as to where they were going to be. If they were going to be ready yet with a new quarterback, a new head coach, some new coordinators, and they're doing a very fine job. I think they're doing great, and they're only going to get better. So coming in versus the Cincinnati Bengals defense, I believe these wide receivers are going to do pretty well, especially with their quarterback, C.J. Stroud. So for the first wide receiver that I have for the Texans, Nico Collins, this is a receiver that obviously is going to be someone who is going to be a very low risk. He is a favorited target there for CJ Stroud, and he's going to continue to get you 7 to 10 targets, somewhere in that realm, which is the opportunities are there, which is why he has such a low risk. you can expect anywhere between 50 and 100 yards receiving, which we like. That's going to get you right there in itself between 10 and 15 fantasy points. So I'm really liking Nico Collins on a weekly basis just because of the opportunities that he receives. As for Robert Woods and Tank Dell had a really good week last week. I really liked the production that he put up. I believe he had around 10 or 11 targets, and he put up a very strong outing. However, I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that Robert Woods being out. Now that we're looking at Robert Woods coming back this week, I think it's going to be a pretty even split on who's going to be wide receiver 2, which is why I have them at medium risk. Not necessarily that one's going to be medium risk, which means one's going to be a low risk. I just think they're both medium risk because they're going to get you anywhere about 5 or 6 targets, but that could mean 2 to 3 receptions, which is going to be a fairly low productive game for them both. But overall, I think that they could still be pretty good flex spots for you, especially with Tank Dell and Robert Woods both being big playmakers. They might get you a touchdown, or they can break out a big play here and there. As for the Cincinnati Bengals, Jamar Chase is obviously one of the best wide receivers in the league right now, especially with his LSU counterpart and Justin Jefferson being out. He is probably the best current active wide receiver out there. He's just so good. Especially with the good quarterbacks that you have for both of these teams, these wide receivers are just, I think it just expounds them and gives them such higher ceilings than what they would get on a different team with another quarterback. Jamar Chase is going to get you tons of targets, tons of opportunity. And he's not only that, but he's such a big playmaker in itself. And having 4 touchdowns on the year is, to me, is good, and that he's getting tons of red zone targets. This is someone that you're going to need to target for you in this week. As for T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins had a pretty good week. Tyler Boyd has shown that he is one of the most consistent wide receivers in the league, averaging around 10 fantasy points per game. I haven't seen anyone that consistent as he's been all year. I feel like this has been Tyler Boyd year after year after year. He's someone that I've had on my fantasy team for years, and it's someone that I can constantly count on to put something on the board. It's not going to be 20 points, but he's going to give you at least 10. And it seems like that's just the most consistent wide receiver. When I think of consistency, it's him. So that's why he's always going to be a medium risk for me. As for T. Higgins is one of the better wide receiver 2s. I think if it wasn't for Jamar Chase, he would easily be a wide receiver 1. But I have him at medium risk just because of the opportunity share that Jamar Chase sucks out of this team and just funnels from Joe Burrow. So other than that, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass this one back to DJ for Cleveland versus Baltimore.
Well, if you're anything like us three, we like to do sports betting. And like Bruno Mars said, we all want to be billionaires so fucking bad. And it has not worked out for us. So if you could come in and help us 3 bozos make better sports bets and help us get rich, help you get rich, we'd much appreciate it. And it'd be obliged. So come and join our Discord chat and make fun of the stupid shit and the stupid bets that we put in, baby. Let's ride.
Yeah, so in this game, it's just like the one you were just talking about, high defenses for sure. So we have Cleveland and Baltimore. And in these games, as you can see, I don't have any low-risk plays, and it's probably the one time currently where I am not feeling really high on Amari Cooper. Currently have Amari Cooper as a medium risk here, and it's just because that Baltimore defense versus wide receivers is tough. We've seen them now 2 weeks in a row be so stingy. Shut down Detroit Lions team, and then also a Seattle Seahawks team, and just has absolutely shut them down. And as you can see here, looking at their stats here on the left, we see that they allow the second most targets to wide receivers, but only the 8th most points, only the 4th least touchdowns, 12th most receiving yards. So they are very good against wide receivers, although the ball is being thrown to them a ton. Because of that, Amari Cooper, I think, falls by the wayside. He is a medium risk. He has all of the talent in the world. In 3 out of the 4 games that he's played with Deshaun Watson this year have been double digits, anywhere from 16 to 25 points this season. But I think that we're looking at sub 10 potentially for this week. Elijah Moore, I do have a high risk, and it is for that reason. Did play Baltimore earlier this year. Amari Cooper had less than 5. Elijah Moore, he had roughly the same exact thing. It was right around there. And I know that they had PJ Walker in at quarterback. It wasn't Deshaun Watson's game, but Elijah Moore, we have seen he's only had one double-digit week this entire fantasy season. So because of that, coming in and playing against this Baltimore team, I do not love giving him a high risk here. Next is Zay Flowers. I'm also giving Zay Flowers a medium risk play. We saw this last week. He kind of took a little bit of a dip, only caught the one pass, and that was it. So Zay Flowers, and I was guilty of that as well. I have him on one of my leagues. He's in my starting lineup consistently, and I definitely bit the bullet on that one. But I think that moving forward, he's an everyday starter. I'm not going to be acting impulsive with that and immediately move him to my bench because of that. I think he is Lamar Jackson's number one option, but I do think that this week we can see that the Cleveland Browns defense is even stingier than this Baltimore Ravens defense against the wide receiver position, with allowing only the second most or second least fantasy points to the wide receiver position. So because of that, Zay Flowers is also going to struggle this week. We saw that he also played Cleveland earlier this year, only had 8 points. So again, not bad flex option type here. So giving him that medium risk. Odell Beckham Jr., he averages 6 fantasy points per game. Don't love him here, giving him that high risk start as well, or high risk play as well here. So that's all that I really have for this game. Just know it's going to be a lot of defense, probably a little bit of a boring game to watch. You love the rivalry between the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens, but for wide receiver play, I think it's fair to say that you need to probably stay away from that. So for the next game, I will be kicking it to Nathan for the San Francisco 49ers versus the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I think this has potential to be a pretty good matchup. I'm actually surprised that it is a noon kickoff, believe it or not. But we all know the 49ers are coming off a bye week. They have dropped 3 straight teams that they probably should have beaten. But given this matchup, we're going to start with the 49ers side of the ball. We have Brandon Ayuk. Like I said, the 49ers are coming off their bye week. They're needing to win to turn things around after dropping 3 straight. So I have Ayuk here as a low risk start. He's averaging about 15.6 fantasy points per game. He's been the number one wide receiver there for Brock Purdy and the 49ers. I know to start his career, he was kind of on Shanahan's not so good list, but he's gotten trust and faith back out of Kyle Shanahan, and they use him extremely well. I believe that Debo's still going to be out, so that leaves Juwan Jennings up. Juwan Jennings is going to be a medium risk to a low risk start, or medium risk to a high risk start, I should say. I apologize. And that is solely because even if Debo Samuel is still out, the 49ers offense still has the weapons of Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk. So I think they're going to try to get the ball to their playmakers. I've really look at this game, really going through McCaffrey, Ayuk, and Kittle to get the offense rolling, getting the ball in the hands of the guys that you trust to help your offense move down the field and win football games. That's really all I got for the 49ers side of the ball. We're going to go ahead and move to the other side of this matchup with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Christian Kirk. I'm going to start with Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk is going to be a low-risk start for me. And I say that because he has averaged 14 fantasy points per game. And in my opinion, I believe that Christian Kirk is the number one wide receiver there for the Jacksonville Jaguars. We all know how good Calvin Ridley can be, but I think that him missing last year really hurt him because I really believe that Christian Kirk and Trevor Lawrence have made a pretty good connection last year, and a connection that rode them into the playoffs. And I believe that when it's time to get a big play, time to get a big first down, the game's on the line, you need a touchdown. I believe that Trevor Lawrence looks towards Christian Kirk because of the connection that they have and the chemistry that they have that is carrying over into this year from last year. And that brings me to Calvin Ridley. I believe Calvin Ridley is a medium risk. I have not loved what I've seen out of Calvin Ridley this year. He has not been what we all thought he has been. He had a really good, fantastic first game. But after that, he's been kind of on a downhill spiral from there. And we hate to see it. A lot of people drafted him kind of high in their fantasy drafts this year. I was not one of them, luckily, but I'm going to keep him here as a medium risk just because I don't love what I've seen from him throughout this year, and he has not been consistent. Plus, they're facing a very good 49ers defense. Like we need to keep that in mind. Like they just traded for Chase Young, so we got to remember that their linebackers are probably one of the best linebackers in all of football with Fred Warner and DJ Greenlaw, and then not to mention now their two defensive ends are Chase Young and Nick Bosa. So I could see the 49ers defense being really, really, really dangerous in this game and causing problems for Trevor Lawrence in the pocket. So uh, I think it can go very one-sided, this matchup, but I'm excited to see how it plays out. That's all I have for this matchup. I'm going to kick it over to Dalton. He's going to cover Green Bay versus Pittsburgh.
All right, fellas, in this one, I think this would be a good halftime show for Lil Wayne. I think we should put him on the spot and have him either choose to rap black and yellow or green and yellow. For this game between the Green Bay Packers and the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is going to be a tough matchup for fantasy managers to kind of figure it out on what they're going to do. The Pittsburgh Steelers is a very forgiving defense this year. They have struggled against the pass. They are currently 24th in targets and they're 29th in yards given up. However, for the Green Bay Packers, we do have Jordan Love, and Jordan Love has been really struggling as of late this as we get into mid form of this year. He has only passed for over 230 yards 3 times through 9 weeks, and so I'm not really expecting a whole lot from him. He's also had 8 interceptions, so he's averaging an interception a game. So that's why I currently have all 3 wide receivers for the Green Bay Packers at a medium risk. If they were playing a much tougher defense, it would be very hard for me to even give them a medium risk just because of the poor quarterback play. This has nothing really to do so much with the wide receivers. Christian Watson, I still believe is their go-to guy. Romeo Doubs is someone who's going to be more of their big playmaker, but is also going to be him and Jaden Reed's kind of the underneath routes. They're more the technicians. However, you still have to put the ball in their hands, and I just don't see Jordan Love doing that very often. Christian Watson only had 1 reception last week, only 2 targets for 37 yards receiving. So he hasn't topped 40 yards receiving the past 3 weeks. And as for Romeo Doubs, he's kind of the same. He hasn't had over 40 yards receiving in the past 3 weeks, and then the only one that's really had anything productive in the last 3 weeks is Jaden Reed. Whereas against Minnesota he had 83 yards, whereas last week he had 19. So we're not really getting a whole lot of strong wide receiver play from the Green Bay Packers as of now, and so I'm not really going to jump on this train. I have them at medium risk just because obviously that's their receiving game. These guys are being fairly consistent, but their quarterback isn't. So I'm not completely sold on these guys as of now. I'm just hoping for better quarterback play. As for the Steelers, Deontay Johnson has been phenomenal. It seems like he's come back and he's been the same Deontay Johnson that we've always known since he's been here. So the last 3 weeks, he has averaged 10 targets per game, and so as of right now, we have him at 8.7, but that's only because he was here for the first week where he got 8. He had received 6 targets, but as of right now, he's definitely been the favorite for Kenny Pickett, and so I really like seeing that. As for George Pickens, ever since Deontay Johnson just came back into the fold, he is kind of taking a back seat. We know how good George Pickens is, but it's obviously Deontay Johnson's team, and we've seen that ever since he's kind of come back. As of last week, George Pickens has only received 10 targets in the last 2 weeks for a total of 21 yards. So he had negative 1 yard receiving last week. So I'm not feeling too good about this, especially coming up against a very tough Green Bay defense. So I would strongly advise staying away from George Pickens in this one. That's all I have for these wide receivers. So now I'm going to go ahead and pass this off to DJ for the New Orleans Saints versus the Minnesota Vikings.
In this game, I like Chris Olave, and that's about all that I can say. I really want to say that I'm on the Jordan Addison board. He's now gone 5-6 weeks in a row of double-digit points, but I would love to see Joshua Dobbs operate as a full-time quarterback in that offense before I have complete faith. And I know that we can argue that, yes, he essentially started the entire game for them this last week, but again, I can't say that I have complete confidence in Jordan Addison, so I am giving, starting with Minnesota here, giving Jordan Addison that medium risk play here. I love him as a wide receiver. I think he belongs in your starting lineups just because of the consistency that he's had. But it wouldn't surprise me to see him throw up another 8-point week or a 10-point week, somewhere up in there, sub double digits. Now, KJ Osborne is not on this list. We're assuming that he isn't going to make this game because of that brutal injury that he ended up facing and getting him pulled out of that game. So assuming he's out, meaning that Brandon Powell will be stepping in as the next wide receiver. And because of that, I am giving him that low risk. A high risk here. It's hard to, again, put any faith in him. I think that this Minnesota offense has kind of been dealt just a very strange hand where that ball is likely to be on the ground a lot. You got to ease Joshua Dobbs into this offense. You can't expect him to know every in and out of this playbook. And if anything, it's going to be Jordan Addison and it's going to be TJ Hawkinson. I think it's hard to imagine that Brandon Powell is going to be putting up double-digit points. He's very touchdown dependent, and because of that, I'm giving him that high risk here. Now, moving on to the New Orleans Saints, Chris Olave, like I said, giving him that low-risk play. He's highly consistent as well. We even saw this last week where Michael Thomas, who I am giving a medium risk, Michael Thomas only had one target last week. One target, didn't catch it. So this was the first time this season where he was held to no catches. I don't see that happening in the near future with Michael Thomas again. I do give him that medium risk, especially in this matchup versus the Minnesota Vikings, who are pretty bad against wide receivers. We see here that they allow the third most targets. They're 30th in targets, 28th in receiving yards, and then 23rd in fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position. So Chris Olave, giving him that low risk play because of that, with how reliable he is, that just sub 10 targets per game, sitting around 13 fantasy points per game throughout the season. Michael Thomas, on the other hand, like I said, didn't register a single point, which now dropped him out of the double digits category for wide receivers on the season. But I still have faith in him. He still demands roughly a 20% target share in that offense. So really like him. Rashid Shaheed, he is a double-digit scorer, 11.3, and really it's just he's a deep ball threat. We see he really catches only 3 balls a game. That's his average, is 3 balls a game, but every single one of those passes that he catches is a minimum of 30, 40 yards. So it's hard to imagine that he's going to continue to throw up those 11 or double-digit points from week to week. But that's really all that I have for this matchup. So I will be kicking it to Dalton, where he is going to be discussing the Tennessee Titans versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
All right, all right. So so in this one we've got the Tennessee Titans versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm actually looking forward to this matchup. I'm going to be all over this on Sunday watching it. I'm excited for this one. Simply because of the fact of the quarterbacks. You know, I feel like these are the underdogs right here. So, but what I like about this is Will Levis, guys. He was just named the official starting quarterback, with Ryan Tannehill officially becoming the backup for this team. And so I'm excited for Will Levis. He's got such a big arm. I feel like he's such a big time playmaker. I actually love watching him. I feel like he's got such a swag and a confidence that I like in a quarterback. And just what he can do with his abilities is just so athletic. And so to be able to pair him up with DeAndre Hopkins, who I have at a very low risk for us this week, I just feel like they're gonna want to throw the ball more than what Ryan Tannehill is. Ryan Tannehill to me was just someone who was such a game manager that they were just like, hey, we just need someone to hand the rock to Derrick Henry. That's all we got to do, and then we'll sprinkle in a couple passes here and there. But with Will Levis, I feel like he's got so much more legs on him than Ryan Tannehill. We know Ryan Tannehill can run, but I just feel like we've got such a more athletic quarterback now, and someone who's got such a better arm. I know he's got a rookie arm and he's going to need to show improvements, but this is someone I think they could build on and make their franchise quarterback. I'm pretty excited about it. And so DeAndre Hopkins, I think too, is just makes it even better. He adds a little bit of sweetness to this. So DeAndre Hopkins is going to have I think he's going to have a good game versus this. The Bucks rank dead last in practically every category of their passing defense and their secondary. So this is a game where I think Will Levis could really show us what he's got, and DeAndre Hopkins is going to be the one that's going to benefit the most from this. As for Nick Westbrook, Akani, I'm not super high on him as of now because of the rookie quarterback. I still feel like DeAndre Hopkins is going to be heavily involved in the game script. But for Nick Westbrook, I just feel like he's not exactly going to be quite there yet with this rookie quarterback. So I feel like I've got him at a very high risk. However, that doesn't mean he still can't have a good game. I just think that we're running more risk with this, especially with the rookie quarterback. I'm going to expect them to rely heavily on DeAndre Hopkins in the pass game with Will Levis, where he's comfortable, and get Hopkins involved in the game script. But we still also got Derrick Henry, and they're not going to just shy away now that they've got Will Levis. So from the run game. So I expect it to be DeAndre Hopkins or Derrick Henry throughout this game in order to win them here against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As for the Tampa Bay, I really like the way that Baker Mayfield's been playing. I feel like he was totally disrespected with the Cleveland Browns, but I feel like he's kind of been welcomed with the Buccaneers, and I feel like he still has some pretty good wide receivers here in Tampa with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Mike Evans is arguably going to be he is going to be a Hall of Famer, and he's playing with a quarterback who is still able to feed him the ball quite often. And so I would continue to expect anywhere between 8 to 10 targets or touches for Mike Evans, and going to get somewhere north of 60 to 70 yards receiving, which to me, that sounds like a 13 to 15 fantasy point game. So I'm going to stay pretty low risk on this. As for Chris Godwin, the same. He's going to get plenty of opportunities from Baker. I just feel like he throws the ball enough to where he's giving his receivers all the opportunities they need to succeed, especially in the fantasy football world. So if you've got either one of these guys, please plug them in. They're going to do you just fine against a middle of the pack Tennessee Titans defense secondary. So I'm really liking DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin in this matchup. Now I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Nathan for him to take it away for the Atlanta Falcons versus the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, so for this matchup, like Dalton said, we have the Falcons versus the Cardinals. It's really hard to get behind anybody who plays for the Atlanta Falcons right now, because it really just seems like everybody is questioning what in the world Arthur Smith is doing. It seems like they have some really good weapons there, and it just seems like he's not using them. I don't know what he's doing with Bijan. We don't know what he's doing with Kyle Pitts. So it's really hard to get behind what the Falcons are doing, or people who play for the Falcons, just because of what Arthur Smith is doing there. But like we've said in the past, it is the NFL. You have to be able to throw the football down the field in order to win football games. We saw that they have switched over to Taylor Heineke now as a starting quarterback. So the receivers that I'm going to cover here for the Falcons today, Drake London. He is still the wide receiver number one there. He is probably one of the wide receivers that's on the Atlanta team that will be a must start, just because he is wide receiver number one. He's currently averaging right around 11.7 fantasy points per game, and his snap share is at 82.8%. So he is on the field quite a bit. They're trying to look at him and get him the ball, because he is one of their playmakers. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have him as a low risk start here. Plus, Heineke is going to need somebody that he can kind of rely on and lean on and look towards in big moments of games where you need that first down, you need the win or the play to keep the drive alive. So I feel like that's going to be Drake London for him. Moving on to Mac Hollins. I'm going to have Mac Hollins pretty much as a high risk start. I feel like he is inconsistent. He makes big plays, but he's only averaging 4.6 fantasy points per game. I don't like that. I think if I'm going to have any wide receivers on my team, I want to see it consistently. Would love to see 11 to 12 points per game. I know we're getting into bye weeks, so you might have some receivers that are out. See if you have better options other than Mac Hollins. I'm not a Mac Hollins fan, and I'm just not a Falcons fan with the way that Arthur Smith is running the football team there. But they are playing a very, very bad Cardinals team. They've they're probably the worst team, currently one of the worst teams in the NFL. It's clear to see that they're totally tanking. It seems like they're tanking this year. I don't know what their plan is with Kyler Murray coming back, but that's another thing to keep in mind too. If you have any Falcon players this week, is they are playing a very bad Arizona Cardinals football team. So enough with that. Moving forward, let's go into the Cardinals. um, Speculation is that Kyler Murray might possibly be back this week. Um, I don't think that really helps. I mean, I think it helps a little bit, but it seems to me that the Cardinals seem to be tanking. They traded away Josh Dobbs, and he's been fairly decent for them. But if Kyler Murray comes back, one of the receivers that I'm going to deem as a low risk start is Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown and Kyler Murray played college football together. They have a very good connection. They have great chemistry going back to their Oklahoma days. So if Kyler Murray is back this week, I fully expect Marquise Brown to have a very good game. Um, Kyler Murray is going to be coming out slinging the rock, maybe make some plays with his feet, but he's going to need the guy that he can lean on and trust on to make the big play, like I've mentioned in the past. And I believe that will be Marquise Brown just because of them playing college football together. One of the other guys that they have there, Michael Wilson and Rondell Moore. Um, I think both of those guys you can go anywhere between a medium to a low risk, a medium to a high risk start. I really believe that Marquise Brown will get a lot of the looks and a lot of the targets. Plus, he's one of the fastest receivers they got, and he can be a big time playmaker for the Arizona Cardinals. But it's really hard to jump on anybody who plays for the Cardinals because of how bad and inconsistent they have been this year. But we'll see what Kyler Murray is able to do this week, and if we can see some consistency now now with him being back and how he's going to operate the offense, we'll be able to see what the next couple of weeks has in store for us for Arizona. They are playing the Falcons. The Falcons are a decent defense. They're not terrible. They're a lot better than what people thought they were going to be. That defense plays. I think they play really good, sound defense, and I think that it could be a struggle for the Arizona Cardinals. But we're just going to have to wait and see what happens with the Kyler Murray situation if he's going to be back and start this week. We're going to kick it over to DJ where he's beginning covering the Lions versus the Chargers.
So in this game, I have Amon-Ra St. Brown as a low risk play here. Again, we saw a game a couple weeks ago where he had 19 targets, and I'm not saying that that's what this game is going to look like, but this Chargers defense has been so bad against the wide receiver position, and that's even coming off this last week versus Zach Wilson, where Zach Wilson looked awful. So even with that, they've dropped to the 27th worst defense versus wide receivers. So because of that, I don't have any faith in them, and I think that Amon-Ra is going to be a top 10, top 5 wide receiver this upcoming week. Looking at his other counterparts in Josh Reynolds, I do have him here as a high risk play. I know that this Chargers defense is bad, but it's hard for me to have any faith in him. We've started to see some of his snap percentage fall down. He was sitting in the mid 80s, but now we're starting to see him in the 76%. And these last couple of weeks, we've started to see that snaps percentage drop. Because of that, I think that the Lions now are starting to move on from him. We saw that they also traded for Donovan Peoples-Jones. I know that he's not on this list, but even if he was on this list, I put him as a high-risk play alongside Jameson Williams. All these other wide receivers, they are booms or busts week to week outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Really, we see that the passing game is Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, and Jahmyr Gibbs. Running back, maybe even David Montgomery if we see him come back. So outside of that, really that's the passing game. All the other wide receivers are booms and busts. But let's go ahead and let's move on to the Los Angeles Chargers here, and it's Keenan Allen. As we mentioned at the beginning of this episode, we see that Keenan Allen hit 10,000 yards receiving in his career, so a huge achievement here. This week, it's hard to. I have him as a low risk play, and it's mainly because it's Keenan Allen. I do think that this Chargers O-line is going to struggle against this Detroit Lions defensive line. And because of that, I think that the wide receivers are going to struggle. I think that we're going to see Justin Herbert, who has struggled a little bit this year. We saw him struggle against the Jets defense, but the Jets defense against wide receivers were top tier. They're one in every single category across the board. Detroit Lions aren't that necessarily. We see them get double digits in almost every single thing except receiving yards. So I have faith in Keenan Allen. I think that he's going to be able to produce. We see him just shy of 11 total targets a game, catching almost 8, almost 100 yards, 4 touchdowns on the year, and demanding that very important 30% target share from this team. So because of that, I do have him as a low-risk play. His counterpart and Quentin Johnston, I do have him as a high-risk play here. We see that Joshua Palmer, we don't really know the status on him yet. But even if he were to come back this week, I still view him as a high risk play. And it's kind of what we were saying. I think that Chargers O-line is going to struggle against this Detroit D-line. Because of that, Quentin Johnston, the wide receiver 2s and 3s, they are going to struggle this week. Even last week, we saw them struggle. So I could see that kind of being a direct reflection going into this game as well. I'm going to go ahead and kick it to Dalton, who will be talking about the New York Giants versus the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, so guys, in this NFC East matchup, we have the New York Giants and the Dallas Cowboys. For the New York Giants, I am not completely sold on these two, Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson. You know, as we've seen here, Daniel Jones is going to be out for the rest of the season with an ACL tear, as we've seen. And then we've also have Tyrod Taylor, who is going to be missing the rest. No, not miss the rest of the season, but he's going to be out with a rib injury, I believe. So now we're left with Tommy DeVito, a rookie. So he did play last week, wasn't amazing. I don't think he passed for more than 200 yards, and I think he also threw for 2 interceptions. So with given that information, he's now coming in versus a very strong, probably the best defense in the NFL right now versus the Dallas Cowboys. So with that, stay away from Darius Slayton, stay away from Rondell Robinson. It's not that, you know, we've been saying, the high risk doesn't mean they're going to absolutely just bust, but there's just too many risks that it points towards the likelihood of them absolutely busting. So I wouldn't expect them to have a great game, if anything. So their ceiling is probably likely to be maybe 4 or 5 targets each, 2 to 3 receptions, and they're probably going to be relying heavily on Saquon Barkley just to run the ball and run the clock out so they can get out of there with minimal amount of damage. So with that being said, as for the Dallas Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb in this matchup is someone that is the only low risk that I have. He's going to be Dak Prescott's favorite target again. He's going to get you between 8 and 12 targets, touches, and he's going to possibly have over 100 yards receiving, which is easily going to put you in the realm of 15 to 16 fantasy points for the game. So I'm really liking that on a week in, week out basis, especially versus a very weak New York Giants defense. As for Michael Gallup, he is a medium risk for me. He hasn't been great as of lately, but I believe he can bounce back this week, especially versus a very weak defense. So I'm looking somewhere around 5 to 6 targets, 30 to 50 passing or receiving yards. So a good flex appeal for you if you're trying to have a receiver that's going to replace someone that's possibly on a bye week for you. As for Brandon Cooks just hasn't been vibing with this team lately, especially with Dak Prescott. I'm a big fan of Brandon Cooks, especially as many times as he's kind of moved around the league, and now landing here with the Dallas Cowboys. I think there's just, you know, with everything going on with Dak Prescott and having CeeDee Lamb on the team, it's, you know, I don't think his target share is just there like it has been in the past, especially when he played for the Houston Texans. So this is a very high risk for me just because his target share has not been quite where I've wanted it to be. And I just don't know if it's going to get there with the New York Giants either. So this is why I have him currently at a high risk. Now, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to DJ with the Washington Commanders versus the Seattle Seahawks.
In this matchup, man, it's going to be a good game. I think this is going to be one of those oddly placed games that's going to be really good game to watch. And I say this because I have Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Jackson Smith-Njigba all as the low risk plays. For those Seattle Seahawks, it's a little bit backwards. I know that I currently have the rookie wide receiver number 3 for this team as the low risk play, whereas the wide receiver 1 and DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett as the wide receiver 2 as medium risk plays. And the reason that I say that, so looking at the Seattle Seahawks, I like Jackson Smith-Njigba in this because in the last 3 weeks, he's been the most consistent wide receiver for this team. In the last 3 weeks, Jackson Smith-Njigba has been double digits in all of those weeks. Tyler Lockett, 1 out of the last 3. DK Metcalf, 1 out of the last 3. Yes, over that span, he did miss 1 game, but still 1 out of his last 3. So with that said, Jackson Smith-Njigba has easily become kind of the go-to target for Geno Smith. He only is getting 5 targets a game, which is the lowest on the team, but it's what he's doing with those opportunities. So really like him against this Washington Commanders team, who is currently allowing the 29th most fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position. Really liking him in here. He's going to get a lot of those underneath routes. Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, I do have them as medium risk plays. I really like them in this matchup, and I do see them having really explosive games, but it's more so kind of their recent performance that it's starting to have me back off a little bit, and just seeing how this Seattle Seahawks offense is ran, it's been really tough to watch. So that's kind of why I'm giving them these medium risk plays. I really like them a lot. They're worth a start on your fantasy team, but I think that again, it's hard to have complete and total faith in them. And I think that if I had to put faith in one wide receiver going into this week, right now it's Jackson Smith-Njigba. But looking at the Washington Commanders wide receivers, Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, I have both of them as low risk plays. Curtis Samuel, on the other hand, we still don't know his injury designation. We haven't heard anything yet about his status moving into week 10. So I think even if he were to come into this game, I still have him as a low risk play. We started to see him fade off a little bit. I don't know if it was because of that injury or anything else before he went out. So I will list him as a high risk play here. But on the other hand of Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, I like them a lot. Terry McLaurin is coming back out. Scary Terry. He has now had 4 straight weeks of double-digit points in fantasy PPR leagues. So really like him here versus the Seattle Seahawks, who allow the 24th most fantasy points. So bottom 10 in the league in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. So I could easily see Terry McLaurin having a very good week this week, as well as Jahan Dotson. We've seen now Jahan Dotson struggled up until these last 2 weeks of the season. These last 2 weeks of the season, 24 points, 16 points in fantasy. So really like the momentum that the two of these guys are going. And again, you got Sam Howell, and everyone had their skepticism on Sam Howell as a quarterback in the NFL, but halfway through the season, 9 weeks into the season, he is second in the NFL in passing yards. So it's impressive. And he's got a really good wide receiver core there in Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Curtis Samuel, who is out right now. So anyways, I really like this matchup. I'm very excited to watch this game, and I can't wait for Sunday because I will be plopped down on my couch getting ready to watch it. But anyways, let's go ahead and let's move on to the Sunday night football game between the New York Jets and the Las Vegas Raiders. Dalton, take it away. Are you trying to get rich quick? Well, so are we. Unfortunately, we tried betting and that hasn't worked, but we're still sticking to it. We do need help though. So what I want y'all to do, I need y'all to join our Discord channel. Drop your best bets in there because me, Dalton, and Nathan all need your help. So please go join that Discord. You can find it in our YouTube description below. Click on that link, join the group, drop your best bets, help us out. We all get money, we all get rich, and we love it. Let's continue with the episode.
Yeah, guys, this one's going to be a matchup that's possibly going to be an eyesore for most. Both of these offenses have been a complete mess. It's been a dumpster fire of a year for both these teams, especially with the New York Jets losing Aaron Rodgers so early. But the one good thing about this offense for the New York Jets is Garrett Wilson. I'm still expecting him to get his shares from Zach Wilson. So Garrett Wilson is still, despite playing on such a trash offense, is still going to get you upwards of 10 targets per game. And he usually turns all of his targets into being fairly productive. So the last couple of weeks, the last few weeks, he has had 12 targets, 13 targets, and 13 targets, and he's had turned them all into each about 7 to 8 receptions. So he's made the most of it, and he's turned those into 80 plus yards per game. Despite not scoring a touchdown since week 2 versus Dallas, he's still been putting up some pretty good fantasy points: 17, 17, and 13. So like I said, pretty low risk for me. Garrett Wilson's going to put you up a solid performance week in and week out, despite being on the team that he's on. As for Allen Lazard, I have him as a medium risk. He's still part of the game plan. Zach Wilson's still in most of their matchups. He's having to throw the ball quite often. And so that's kind of benefited the wide receivers despite the team. So Allen Lazard, I'm expecting 5 to 6 targets. He's going to be a good flex appeal for you. So that's someone I would definitely be trying to put stash on your team. Like I said, I've been hinting at bye weeks or something that people have been, dreading. And if that's you, Alan Lazard is still going to put you up a solid gameplay that will get you till next week. So as we know now, Josh McDaniels now out of the organization and now coming in with an interim head coach, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty with this team, especially with the gameplay too from Jimmy Garoppolo. I have Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers, two very talented wide receivers at medium risk here, just because we don't know what to expect from them as of right now. Devontae Adams he's had 14 targets the last couple of weeks, but he's only had 5 receptions and he's totaled to combined 40 yards receiving. So he's been not very productive at all. He's just not looking like himself. And I wouldn't put all the blame on him so much as it is the team and those around him. And as for Jacoby Myers, also again very talented. He's shined very well on this team. He's had plenty of opportunities. I think that they two are very coveted wide receivers that any team would love to have. However, just because of their circumstances, I have them at medium risk because they are so talented, but I just feel like the team that they're on is really starting to hold them back. However, I would still take Devontae Adams or Jacoby Myers over Allen Lazard, even though I have them at medium risk. So if you're having one or two or all three of these receivers on your team, I like the Raiders receivers despite going against one of the strongest pass secondary teams in the Jets. However, I like the talent overall over Lazard. However, I take Garrett Wilson over all three. So if you're looking at this, Garrett Wilson, then I would go with the Raiders receivers and Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, and then Allen Lazard. I think these are two very trash offenses. I think their defenses are really good. However, just due to the poor offensive play, I think the receivers still benefit quite well just because of how their offense have to keep up in the game script and have to rely heavily on their passing. So, however, with that being the Sunday night game, I'm going to go ahead and pass this off to Nathan for the Monday night football between the Denver Broncos and the Buffalo Bills. So, Nathan, take it away.
Yeah, this is a very interesting matchup in my opinion, because I when people think of the Buffalo Bills, they think of how good they are, high powered offense, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, all of them. I think, in my opinion, and it might make some people mad, that I believe the Buffalo Bills are the biggest frauds in the NFL. I say that because I have watched them in a couple of primetime games this year and struggle against teams that they should have steamrolled. One of those teams were the Giants. And if there was that holding or PI call on Darren Waller in the end zone, I think the Giants win that football game. Enough of that, though. They're playing the Broncos. Um, let's just dive right into it. The Broncos, they need to find another ride. it's not working out for them. I have Cortland Sutton here. Cortland Sutton is wide receiver number 1 for Russell Wilson. It seems like he kind of looks towards him when he's needing someone to make a big play for that offense. I'm going to have him here as a low risk start because he is averaging 12.9 fantasy points per game. And if you do have him and you do have wide receivers on a bye week, that is a good person to plug into your lineup and to get some solid points for you as a player that's been on your bench and that you could use in for a placement for one of your other receivers who's on a bye week. Well, moving on to Jerry Jeudy. We got Jerry Jeudy here. I'm going to have him as a medium risk to a high risk start. He hasn't been what a lot of people thought he's been. I really thought coming into this season that Sean Payton was going to utilize him a lot more, and Russell Wilson was going to get him the ball a lot more. It has not happened. He's been inconsistent. I really believe that Jerry Jeudy at this point in time in his career, he just needs a big change. He needs to go to a new team and re-identify himself as a wide receiver in the NFL. I think the talent is there. I just don't think he's being utilized the way that we all would like there in Denver. But I'm going to leave him there as about a medium risk start, and just like Cortland Sutton here, better. Moving on to the Bills. I mean, guys, Josh Allen has thrown what 9-10 picks already this year, something like that. Really getting into the wide receivers, you have Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs is a low risk guy. I mean, they're going to get him the ball. He's going to get his looks. He's going to get his targets. He's going to get receptions. Going to get you some touchdowns. He's averaging 21.7 points per game in fantasy. So, yeah, he is a must start. He is a low risk. That's a no brainer. Going into Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis is. I'm going to leave him as a medium risk. This is kind of hard for me because I know DJ had covered Rashid Shaheed earlier in this episode, and I feel like Gabe Davis is kind of the same style of player. He is averaging 11.4 fantasy points per game, but he is the big play guy. You're hoping that if you start him, that Josh Allen can hit a couple of big plays, 40, 50-yard touchdown passes. That's kind of his gameplay in the regular season. And I like the more consistency. I like Stephon Diggs, who gets a lot more targets, and they kind of use him anywhere on the football field, to where you look at Gabe Davis and you're really banking on a home run shot. That's pretty much all I'm going to cover for this Monday night game. I feel like the Bills will cover the spread here, but I'm just not a big Bills fan. I think they really struggle with opponents that they shouldn't struggle with, and I do believe that they're a fraud of a football team. I think they look really great at sometimes, and they look really, really bad at sometimes. And I don't like the Bills. But that's all I got for this week for this matchup. But before we move on, I will want to say that neither one of us are Texas Rangers fans, but they did just bring a World Series back to the area that we grew up in, and it's kind of nice to see a team win their first ever World Series. So it's good to see.
But say when we were going through high school, them fellas, they made it to the World Series. Didn't win it.
Choked.
Back to back.
Back to back and choked.
Back to back.
Boys.
So it was
They ran it.
It was nice to see him. Yeah.
It was nice to see him to finally win a World Series, and one that a lot of people didn't think they were even going to make it.
Either team. I would have, the beginning of the season, I said, they said name two teams going to the World Series. I'd have never said Texas Rangers or Arizona Diamondbacks. Never happened.
Well, the Arizona Diamondbacks,
give them a quick shout out.
Snuck in right at the end too.
Yeah, it was crazy. But anyways, guys, thank you all so much for listening to the episode. That is all that we have. But like always, we always want to try to build this community. Like we've said, we are a growing channel. So any and every little bit of support helps along the way. So thank y'all from our day ones. Thank you for our day nows. It doesn't matter to us. It doesn't make a bit of difference. We just love the continued support. So please keep it coming. We would love to hear from you guys, but we need y'all to join our community because we are active in there daily, posting our bets, whether that is the NFL, college football. The NBA has just started. College basketball has just started. So there's a ton of stuff to bet on, a ton of stuff to lose money on. And boy, are we good at losing money. So that's why we need y'all to join that community to help us out. We are not experts. Please get in there and help us. I'm tired of losing money. Dalton, on the other hand, he's my brother. It's hard to listen to your brother whenever he throws out betting advice. So it goes in one ear, out the other for me. But it turns out this last week, I should have listened to him.
Went 3 for 3, guys. I'm hot right now. I'm hot. But it ain't going to last forever. And when it doesn't last and that light goes out, I'm going to need some help. So, guys, come help us out a little bit. I'm hot. But when I'm out, I need someone else to be hot. So that way I can stay hot. know what I'm saying?
Because the thing is Dalton, I'm letting you know right now. I'll tell you this upcoming week. I'm going to tell your bets. So just proceed with caution if you're a listener, because I don't know if that's the smart move. If I'm telling it, it's probably not the right move.
Hey, that's
So
all right. But
we'll
guys,
see how
hey,
this week goes.
Guys, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Guys, tell us how we can get better. Help us out a little bit. If you guys think we can improve something, let us know. If you have something you want to add some feedback that we might have forgotten, then let us know. Also, hit that bell icon. Guys, we have new content coming out on a weekly basis too. But if you want to hear us on a daily basis, like DJ said, guys, please check out the Discord. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to see you then.
See ya next time.
Deuces.
Oh, owe me one, Nathan.